Go ahead.
Going back to number 2, you've changed spouse and names of any dependent children to any relative. I'm not sure what that means because I
Relative
always
is a
get,
little broader statement. You're not singling out just your spouse or your children. It's a relative. So it could be a cousin, it could be an aunt, it could be an uncle.
okay. So would it be possible to add or if they work at the county, or if they work for any organization that has a contract or does business with the county?
I think that we could.
Is that covered?
That's covered.
Is that covered somewhere else?
It's covered down below.
Right.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so the next one was the financial interests. A, B, C, D, E, and F. We eliminated those. We stepped and under, and that's been eliminated through the financial interest questions. Did feel there was a consensus that that question really wasn't relevant to what we're trying to achieve here at the county. Question A, or bullet point A, list any office, trusteeship, directorship, partnership, or other positions in a business associated proprietary or to not-for-profit organizations held by you. Again, the term your spouse and your dependent children was replaced with relative. If any, for business that are involved with the county or a municipality within the Warren County, again, this was just a little bit of a language change. We took out, indicated where the business was and just modified it with any for business that are involved with the county and municipal. So you've got to state that nature in this particular question. Is there anything that any of the colleagues of mine on the board advisory committee would like to add to that particular portion of the financial disclosure? Sure.
Chairman.
Mr. Bruno.
I don't want to cover this thing, but because we do say you and your relative, if any, maybe we should change family member to relative. I just throw that out. And, relative and relationship. In other words, if you, maybe it's not necessary, but I just think if you put someone down, say John Smith, cousin, and then you say position, organization, and just throw that out there.
Where it says family member, just change it relative?
Yes.
Okay.
And you might want to say relative and slash relationship.
Okay. Very good. Chairwoman Seaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a point of clarification that might be helpful throughout this discussion is that the board did approve Resolution 250 of 2021. In that local law 5, Section 3 is definitions. Those definitions are what would apply to this form. This has already been passed and approved by the board. In Section 3, subsection E, relative is defined as a spouse, child, or stepchild, or dependent. So those are the ones that would be applicable under the financial filing. It does, under Section F, state spouse means a husband or a wife of the municipal officer or employee unless living separate and apart in contemplation of divorce or formal separation. So those definitions were changed to be consistent with other policies and in the best practices that the board had decided on during that.
Good, thank you. Any other comments on that? Move on to the next one, item B. Describe any outside occupation, employment, trade, business, or profession providing more than $1,000 per year for you, your spouse, and your relative. And it was determined that, or it was suggested that the dependent children was taken out of it, the language, if any, and indicated where such activities are regulated by the state of New York. So in other words, it's describe any outside occupation, employment, trade, business, or profession providing more than $1,000 per year for you and your spouse and your relative for the outside employment is involved with the county or any municipality within Warren County. Again, the categories of amounts were removed or suggested to be removed, and it was a specific a language change in regards to dependents and children's and other activities. So, any questions, comments around paragraph B?
Jack, just one
Mr.
question.
Jardy?
Would you change, so you're gonna change that, the heading from family member to relative? Is that would move both of those?
If it becomes the pleasure of the board, sure, of the committee, yeah.
What's that?
At the pleasure of the committee, sure.
Well, I mean, that's what we're talking about, relatives. We're not talking about family
Yeah.
members. I mean, it's just, you keep it the same.
Okay. Okay, item C. Any other questions around paragraph or item B? Or comments? Item C, future employment. Describe any contract promises or other agreements between you and anyone else with respect to your employment after leaving your county office or position. If such agreement is with a person or business involved with the county or any municipality within Warren County. I believe that's an addition to our current disclosure form. Any questions around
How do you know?
paragraph?
If you're, this is where you're working as part of the, we're on as a county person now, right?
Mhm.
So do you really need that future employment? If you don't, what if you don't know? Then it's NA, not applicable?
Yes,
Okay.
Brian?
I think my read of this, and I'm parachuting in at the last minute. I reviewed all this last night, and it matches up with section. Basically, the purpose of the disclosure form is to tie back into the ethics code, and if this matches up with section 12A of the ethics code, which says that no Warren County officer or employee may ask for, pursue, or accept a private post-government employment opportunity with any person or organization that does work here. So the gist of this is that it's saying you can't be dealing with somebody in your role as a county officer while you're also making a deal with them for future employment. So I think that answers your question, is to know you don't have a crystal ball, but what this is designed to ferret out is the disclosure of a situation that's like that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Chairwoman Seaver.
Mr. Chairman, is there a way to make that a little clearer then to what Administrator Moore just said? Because I agree with Supervisor Garrity that it does look like we're trying to ask people to have a crystal ball. But is there language that would just,
I think it's fairly clear because we're asking them to disclose a contract, promise, or other agreement.
anyone else with respect to your employment after leaving your county position?
And at this point in time, filling out the document.
Right,
You can't make that prediction.
Right.
You just don't know. It's
Yeah.
so do we even need it?
We're asking them for something that's in existence at that moment when they're filling it out. And I think that's appropriate.
Okay, I agree. That when they.
Yeah.
After.
Okay. Next item. D was stricken. Past employment, identify the sources and nature of any income in excess of $1,000 per year from any prior employee, including deferred income, contributions to pension, retirement funds, profit sharing, severance pay. I just don't see why that should apply for many people that have had assortments of different jobs over time. It just doesn't make any sense to ask that question.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
in town level, we had an instance of this where a town council person had a retirement from a local company that they served with, and town was going to go into contract for service provided by that company. They did recuse themselves from it. Just to be very clear, I too really wonder, and that was a question around the board as well, how close is this? You are no longer actively engaged in that business, but you are receiving a pension from that business. And some businesses have multiple departments and divisions that were not related to your job or whatever. I think it was tried to ferret out any type of favoritism or such, but it seems to be a very weak link. I have no problem with it being eliminated.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments around that particular paragraph?
Yep.
The one that
Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead.
if you work for a big company and they sell a product to the town, just because you're drawing a pension, it should have no bearing on what you're doing. I mean, I don't think, you know, if you, I'd like it being stricken. I don't think it's.
Bruno? You
I just wondered, we're still on the first, on the one that was stricken.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Are
have
you
a
okay with
comment- I have
that?
a comment on the new one, so to speak, Part D,
Okay,
when you get to it.
all right, we'll move on. Is everybody comfortable with the paragraph that was stricken?
I-
Okay, we'll move
Mr.
on with
Chairman?
D. Yes,
And I'm sorry again for interrupting the committee, but I've heard from the public when discussions were about the revision of this document. And, you know, one of the big questions are, what are you trying to hide? I have no idea how to answer that, but I don't see the purpose of striking this
I don't think,
along the lines of, what are you trying to hide? And I know the whole idea is to tie it with the ethics code, right? And it's the idea of saying, are there any potential conflicts of interest? I've been with a big company, so yes, I do have a pension from a big company. But what's the problem of putting that down?
I think, personally, I think that, you know, that question is requiring you to include a history of payments, or whether it's profit sharing or what it may be, in this disclosure statement. I, for one, don't feel that it's necessary, but I don't have anything, and to your point, I don't really have anything to, or hide in respect to it. I just thought it was something that, if the committee agreed to, that we would strike that.
Mr. Chairman.
When people ask me in the public, what are we trying to hide? I don't believe anybody's going to say we're trying to hide anything at all. But
Then-
there are some things that are asked in the original document that probably are unnecessary. And my thought at this point in time, this is one paragraph that would be, but that, again, is up to the committee and how they would like to look at this. You ready?
Well, I mean, you know, I could turn the tail on that and say, I work for a company that made commodity products that sell all over the country and sell to Warren County. And I get a pension from them. So do I want somebody making a big thing about a case of paper that they sell to Warren County because I work for a paper company? You know, people could turn it around too, Mike, and they could make a big deal about somebody who worked for a larger company and they sell paper, or commodity, or pencils, or pens. So somebody could say, well, see, gee, he gets a pension from that company and they sell their pens to Warren County. So it could work both ways. I mean, I don't know if it's necessary in that case.
Mr. Chairman.
I mean, I have no problem doing it either way. But
In that case, it's dependent.
I
All right,
think so.
Mr. Liggett?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But you know what I'm saying.
More.
The stricken paragraph D is a bit obtuse. It does not tie back to any relationship with doing business with Warren County.
Amen.
Mrs. Bramer?
I think it's not needed to have it in there, especially when we're asking all, you know, every employee who has to fill this out is going to list every single prior employer who might still be providing them a pension. I just don't see how that flushes out any conflicts with current. Certainly if there was an issue like that Craig was talking about, you should recuse yourself and And then you can amend your form if needed, if something like that comes up, but I don't,
Yeah, I'd make a similar point as to the point I made about future employment. Our ethics code speaks to a situation in which future employment could be a conflict of interest. Our ethics code does not speak to a situation where past employment is problematic, and it never has. So the question of why would we ask for information on past employment, it's not for purposes of complying with the ethics code or for analyzing whether that information for anybody presents a conflict, because our ethics code doesn't take a position on it. So why ask it? It seems extraneous.
Mrs. Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just point out too that the board approved and passed Appendix C, which is not part of the charge duties within looking at this financial filing form. Appendix C is an outside interest form that is for any employee of the county where, for instance, it asks on here, describe the nature of your outside activities in an entity that engages in any business or maintains any relationship with the county. If after you fill out this financial disclosure form, or for those individuals that are not filing out the financial disclosure form, everyone has to update their form should their circumstances change. And that is part of the training that is being developed that the board approved to go out to all of our employees. So they will, in this 10-minute training or 15-minute training exercise that they'll have to take, just like we take cybersecurity and sexual harassment, they will take an ethics training. And in that, they'll be reminded that should their circumstances result in any type of a potential conflict, or an outside interest form must be filed that is separate and apart from this. So it probably does certainly go above and beyond Supervisor Wild in terms of your concern there, not just for those filing, but for every single employee. And so again, that remains untouched and was not part of this, but and I don't think we've updated that. This is in direct consistency with prior plans and with the state. So that form is still there, and I've been told, while not well above a minimum requirement from our county attorney on it. So
Thank you. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I agree this needs to be stricken. It's kind of a joke, actually. Identify any source, nature of any income in excess of $1,000 per year from any prior employer. So I guess when I was caddying up at the country club and doing 2 bags twice a day and making $10 in the morning and $10 in the afternoon, that's $20 a day. Thank God I don't have to report that. But maybe somebody wants to know when I was caddying. If they do, they can feel free to call me, and I'd be glad to tell them the afternoons I was caddying. Maybe they'd like to go out with me sometime. And then carrying a paper and throwing a paper for the Post-Star. You make $1,000, back when you're 11 years old, it's kind of ridiculous. It's actually absurd. Maybe that's why we've only got, this year we've got 19 supervisors running for office. Only 13 are running opposed. Only 13 are running unopposed. There's only 6 supervisors running opposed. Maybe that's why. Maybe people feel that maybe people don't want this job because it's so overbearing. So thank God I won't have to put in my caddy pay this year. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on that, on item D?
Yeah.
Mr. Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Someone asked me, what are you trying to hide? Simple answer, nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Amen. Next item is investments. Itemize and describe all investments in excess of 5,000 or 5% of the value in any business, corporation, partnership, or other assets, including stocks, bonds, loans, pledges, collateral, and other investments for you or your relative. The word spouse was changed because it's defined as a relative in the language, and dependent children also. That's defined as spoken by Chairwoman Seaver. If any, list the locations of all real estate within the county or within 5 miles thereof in which you or your relative, if any, have an interest regardless of its value. I don't think it's important to use the financial paragraphs with A through F. I think just disclosing that is significant enough rather than including a range of values. Mr. Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would add that I think this might need some qualification. It seems kind of open. If we ask this question, and again, it's similar to some of the things we've stricken. It doesn't say related to the county or anything else. It just says itemize all this stuff, if any. This location of real estate within the county, that's okay. But this other stuff, itemize and describe all investments, yada, 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 if any what? Related to the county, or I just think there needs to be some specificity there.
So are you suggesting we add language in there that,
Yeah, just,
that's relative to, related to the county?
yes, that would be my suggestion.
Kramer, how do you feel?
Thank you.
I agree with that. I think that's what we did in some of those earlier questions too. Like Supervisor Bruno said, characterize what our interest may be as it relates to the county. Like, I mean, what does it matter if you have stocks in AT&T or something?
Right.
Ready?
No, I somewhat agree. I don't understand some of it.
Okay. Brian, did you make that note?
I will make that note, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, so if I was to fill this in excess of 5% or $5,000, whichever is greater or lesser.
Do you want to use so what you're suggesting is maybe insert greater,
Well, yeah, it seems
remove excess?
right. For example, if I maybe had, so let's take a stock, for example. I have $5,000 worth of stock in a company. I would put that down, even though I might only have 0.0005% of a standing in it. Is that how it reads? Or would I need to be able to hit at least that 5% within a company, which could be much greater than 5,000?
I read it in excess of 5,000 or 5%. I'll defer
That
that
has
question.
ties to the county, correct? Sorry,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and I defer that to Mr. Terwilliger to if he also feels that's the interpretation.
I see it and read it in the disjunctive. It says items and itemize and describe all investments in excess of $5,000 or 5%. I see it as either because of disjunctive or conjunction. So I see it as $5,000 or 5%, either one. If it's $5,000 in excess of 5,000 or in excess of 5%.
So it'd be the lower of the two.
It would be, I guess, like the lower of the two. If it's 5,000, more than $5,000, but could be less than 5% or greater than 5%, or if it's 5% but worth less than $5,000. I mean, Apple's a $2 trillion company. I mean, 1% of Apple is about $20 billion. You know, I read it that way, either kind of an either or because of the or.
So the question I'm going to ask this committee is, do you want to keep that language current, or do you want to change that wording? How does everybody feel about
I agree with the attorney. I would leave it the way it is.
that? Leave it. Okay. Brad?
I'm just confused. This has to do anything investment that the county would have ties to, like, say, Supervisor Leggett invested in Eaton up there in Chestertown. If he had a 5% or $5,000, would you have to, I'm just saying, if you happen to have.
I heard he's
obviously,
majority owner.
You have more money in your farm, but you know, no, I'm just pointing, I mean, like, all my investments? Or does it just have to do with the county?
I think it's just the county.
That's That's, excuse me. but
So
that's-
should we add that wording?
That's what we already talked.
So if you have any interest regarding of its value to the county, or, and its value obtaining to the county, or, I mean,
Yes.
okay, so you're adding that wording then.
Right.
Is that what I'm saying? Okay.
Could, Mr. Chairman, if Siemens does business with the county. We do county business with Siemens. Now, the way I would interpret this is you'd have to, if you own $5,000 or more worth of stock with Siemens,
Mhm.
you should list that. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes.
Okay, that makes some sense to me, right? Since they are a vendor of the county, that makes some sense. Okay.
And since Eaton isn't, Supervisor Leggett wouldn't have to claim that.
Well, as majority owner, I thought, well, we won't go into that.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Thank you. The idea here is that if you had $5,000 worth of stock or more in Siemens, since they do business with the county, it doesn't want to be portrayed that you would vote in favor of them on
Right.
something because of that, because you own stock. Correct?
Right.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
I agree.
Okay. Any other comments around that?
It does come into if I invest in a mutual fund where Siemens is one of the large portfolio of that fund. How does that work? And perhaps that position.
Hmm.
Yeah. How do you determine? Yeah.
Well, first of all, a lot of the mutual funds, a lot of people don't even know what they invest in. Okay, so that would be news even to some stockholders what they're investing it in. They buy the fund, they don't buy the actual stocks in the fund. Some do, some don't. So that would be confusing. But I think if we want to get right down to the nitty gritty, you could contact the mutual fund, ask them what positions they hold in each of the stocks. And that to me is it's almost kind of ludicrous if you ask me. You got to call every mutual fund you own, say, all right, now give me a listing of every stock that you've bought, and give me the percentage of what we own in that and so forth and so on. I don't think that's the intent of this question. I think it's a standalone stock. If I own Siemens, if I own $5,000 more of Siemens, I should probably list that. That's how I interpret it, Supervisor Leggett, but maybe I'm wrong.
You could get an answer from your mutual fund and then the answer could change tomorrow without me knowing it.
Exactly. Thank you. Even more so.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's do a more common one here for an example. The county does a lot of business with Aero Bank Corp. With Glens Falls National. We've got
Mhm.
millions invested with them. If you have $5,000 of the bank stock, should we recuse ourselves from every financial decision of the county? All part of this
Point.
stuff.
It's a good
Right,
question.
so everybody's shaking their head. No, it doesn't make sense, but if you read this,
Well, I think if
Is
it's a
that-
contract to like hire Glens Falls National Bank as our bank, that might be one thing, but not every financial decision has to do with who our county money is sitting with. Right?
I would say if you stand to benefit. I don't know that in some of these
Good point.
situations that Supervisor Bramer is to, you don't stand to necessarily benefit directly from that, but if you were considering hiring them specifically for something.
I mean, we could include language in there that speaks to if you stand to benefit from it. If you want to add something. Everybody else?
I think in that example, Aero Bank, you would disclose it because the county has dealings with them. But, at the end of this form, there's a statement there that says just because you disclose something, it doesn't imply that you did anything wrong. The purpose of this is to put the information out there so that it can be looked at and you keep an eye on whether or not you're ever going to have a conflict. That's essentially what we're trying to do. Just because something goes on here doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means it's something that you got to keep an eye on.
Move on with the next one, F. Trust. Identify each interest in a trust or state similar beneficial interest in any assets in excess of $2,000 except for the IRS eligible retirement plans or interest in the estate or trust of a relative or you and your spouse and your dependent. That was stricken from this proposal. Is there any comments around that? Okay. Move on to the next section, which is other income. Identify the source and nature of any other income in excess of $1,000 a year from any source not described above, including teaching income, lecturing fees, consulting fees, contractual income, and other incomes of any nature. That's been stricken, and also we stricken the spouse and your dependents and children. So I'd like to reread that again to identify the source and nature of any income in excess of $1,000 per year from any source not described above for you and your relatives. If any, provide that such income is from a source that is involved with the county or the municipality within Warren County. That was the changes. Any questions around the wordage changes on F?
Chairman,
Yes.
I think that just makes it very clear that if you have any income coming, whatever it is, coming from something involved with the county, you've got to list it here. Like Ryan said, that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just something to watch out for. I do think we should delete the category of amount because we're not including that stuff anymore, right?
Okay, yep.
Category of what?
The category of amount is
Oh,
not, that should have been scratched out, I think.
Okay, item 4, interest in contracts. Describe any interest of you or your relative in any contract involving the county or the municipality within Warren County. I think that we have to include relative as in replacement of the family member. We've done that as we've gone along. Is there any questions around that? Very specific. Next. Political parties. List any position you held within the last 5 years as an officer of any political party, political committee, or political organization. The term political organization includes any independent body or any organization that is affiliated with or subsidiary of a political party. I don't know how that applies to a financial disclosure statement. I felt as though that, that's something that we need to strike from this disclosure statement. Any comments around that?
I agree.
Okay, great. We'll move on to the next item, 5, debt. Describe all debt you have in your relatives owe to the county or any municipality within Warren County in excess of $5,000. Also, it says outstanding occupancy tax payments, which includes tax liens as of the date of the filing of this statement and other liabilities to a relative. What we removed out of that or suggested we do is do not list liabilities incurred by or guarantees made by a reporting individual or such individual's spouse or by any reporting proprietorship, partnership, or corporation in which the reporting individual or such individual spouse has any interest. When incurred or made in the ordinary course of the trade, business, or professional practices of the reporting individual, connection with maternal actions, alimony, child support payments, revolving charge account information shall be set forth if such liability is in excess of $5,000 at the filing. I don't know if I was really clear on that, but I'd like to hear any comments on that particular paragraph. Any questions, Craig?
Yeah, I was just thinking, this goes back to Supervisor Bramer pointing out the category amounts
Yep.
being stricken from. have other income, where there is a amount described in this one in excess of $5,000, would it be appropriate to put in a category now? I don't think so.
Okay. How's everybody else feel about that?
I'd leave it the way you,
Okay.
I guess the fact that you put it in there, it's in excess of 5,000.
Right.
So, okay, good.
Okay, next item. Third-party reimbursements. Identify and describe the source of any third-party reimbursements for travel-related expenditures in excess of $250, if any matter that relates to you, your official duties. The term reimbursements includes any travel-related expenses provided by anyone other than the county for speaking engagements, conferences, or fact-finding events that relate to your official duties. The categories were stricken. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, can we go back to, I'm sorry, can we go back to debts? I just had a question.
Sure.
Chairwoman brought something up. The part that says revolving charge account information should only be set forth if such liability is in excess of 5,000 at the time of filing. What does that mean? In other words, if you have a charge account, revolving charge account information shall be only set forth if such liabilities in excess of 5,000. So that means if you owe the county more than $5,000, you need to list it. Is
That's the interpret.
is that what it's saying? Okay, so, it's almost saying it again what the top sentence said, which was, if we, describe all debts of you and your relative owed to the county or any municipality within Warren County in excess of $5,000.
Right.
So it seems like we're saying the same thing twice. Is that correct? I mean, I don't know if we need to say it, that's all, the second one. Saying it again, the same thing.
Robert, you want to weigh in on that?
I was just kind of wondering about it. I mean, to me, I look at it and see a revolving charge account information shall only be set forth. That looks, to me, it looks like it means credit cards. I was wondering if that kind of fit in more with the previous definition, that a lot of which has been removed here in the draft.
Right, so,
That
so you're saying if you have a credit card over $5,000, you need to list that, and you're saying probably.
we still need to list that? Is that-
No. Let's just delete that sentence.
it's
Yeah.
intended to delete that.
Duplicative, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody has a revolving account or loan or anything from the county. I mean, the LDC makes loans to businesses and that, but that's something separate. I don't know of any revolving loans or charge accounts that anybody would have with the county.
So we should strike that. then.
So we're striking that
Yeah.
sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And just may I, Mr. Chairman?
Chairwoman.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I just wondered, it just looked like that was redundant. But to your point about like an LDC loan or something, obviously we'd see that on the outside interest form as well. So
Yes.
I definitely think that is very extensive on that outside interest form. I just wondered if it just got missed in duplicate and the redundancy. So thank you.
So the only sentence we're going to have is describe all debts you have and your relatives owe to the county or any municipality within Warren County in excess of $5,000 tax payments, or as a date of filing of the statement other than liabilities to relatives, period. The rest of it's been stricken.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we went on to, we just discussed
Number 6.
number 6. Again, identify and describe the source of third-party reimbursements. We did talk, I don't think there was any real discussions around that.
Except we do see description and amount was added in, source, description, and amount. Again, to be consistent, it's, do we need the amount? If you're putting it down here, we know it's over $250. So therefore,
Let's get rid of it.
Okay,
Agreed.
so we're removing the amount
so the source.
because it's exceeding the $250. Any other questions around that? Next item, gifts and what's that called?
Honorarium.
Honorariums. Has anyone attempted to influence you by giving you aggregated in excess of $75 receiving during the last year by you or your relative, including gifts from a relative? The term gifts include gifts of cash, property, personal items, payment to third parties on your behalf, forgiveness of debt, for honorariums, and any other payments that are not responsible as income. Again, the language that was removed was listed, the sources of all, and your spouse if dependent, and what was replaced and inserted in there was relative. And it looks like the amount has been stricken also. Is there any questions around that? Or comments or additions? Mr. Bruno?
Again, in keeping with, consistency, maybe you should take out value of the gift, because again,
Okay.
we're saying in excess of $75. I'll just throw that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Just a comment.
Okay.
I'm assuming the 75 it's been reduced to that amount because that's what's in our ethics law. You can't
Yes.
accept a gift more than 75. Okay,
And that's also state law.
okay.
Okay, the next item is the requirement of law relating to the reporting of financial interests are in the public's interest and no adverse interference or unethical or illegal conduct or behavior will be drawn merely from compliance with these requirements. That is, then there's a comment statement at the end. The filer shall provide the Board of Ethics with additional information if requested to do so by the Board of Ethics. The reporting requirements of the statement is required by New York State law and the law of Warren County. Improper use of any of the information contained in the statement by any third person or entity in violation of privacy or other rights or to harass or annoy the filer of this statement is separately punishable under the law. The FOIL request for information contained in this document will be denied if the information will be used to harass, annoy the filer. That was an added statement to this financial disclosure to try to prevent people from taking this financial disclosure and using it in an adverse manner. I like the addition to that. Any comments around that filer statement? Reporting requirements.
Yeah, Chairman, I believe that I've read similar, and I can't remember now, just yesterday, about that with respect to using this information adversely against someone. I think it's against the law, punishable actually under the law, but sorry, I didn't make note of where that is right now. So that's a good.
Anybody else, any comments on that disclosure? Claudia?
I like it. I think it's been a concern of many of us that these forms are released under FOIL and used to just merely harass people about the information that they put in here. As we've said, may not mean you're doing anything wrong. You're trying to put information in that will help the Board of Ethics now that we actually have a Board of Ethics who's instructed to review these rather than all of these sitting in a box waiting to be foiled. So I think it's good. I just have a couple of wordsmithing things. We need to delete that quotes there at the end of ethics, at the end of the first sentence.
Yep.
And then I think maybe that last sentence in the second paragraph that starts with a freedom of information law request should be bumped down to that, to the end of the third paragraph.
Last sentence to the last sentence of third paragraph.
Yeah, the last sentence of the second paragraph, maybe move that down since that third paragraph relates to FOIL. Put those two FOIL sentences together. But say, this is subject to FOIL, but it can be redacted And then the second sentence would read, a FOIL request contained for information will be denied if the information will be used to harass or annoy the filer.
Okay with that?
And that's that. Yeah. Okay.
Chairman,
Yes.
I think another point worth noting, Supervisor Beatty and I discussed this, is the length of this with respect to that ethics committee. And you had the figures better than I do. This originally was what, 17 pages times
80 people.
80
So
people.
there was like 1,300 pages the ethics board had to go over page by page. I mean, which is just absolutely ludicrous for volunteers to ask them.
So that's a good, call it a side effect of reducing this, is it makes it more manageable for the ethics committee, in my estimation. Thank you.
You did a great job, Chairman.
Well, I'm not going to take credit for this in its entirety. There was a lot of people involved with this, including our acting attorney, Mr. Terwilliger, that sat down but it was an effort of this group, this advisory committee to be active and to come up with a compromise that would work for Warren County. And I think that's where the credit lies, is people really wanted to make a difference. They volunteered to do this. And I think we got a pretty good document to present to the full board and see what the full board thinks about it. But I want to thank everybody for taking the time and reading the draft and including their comments in this. This is an effort of the committee, and that's how committees work in Warren County. So,
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman. I just had one more comment. I don't see a signature line here or anything, or is
I
that,
think that was
Top
on,
of page
yes.
7 of 8.
that on?
It got kind of cut off, but it's there.
Oh, okay. All right. Then I didn't- Thank you.
Just on that kind of thing, I want to, who is going to be incorporating the changes that we talked about today? Is that Ryan? Or someone else?
It could, well,
Did they get, but I just want to make sure my last changes
I
about
would
the
like
FOIL
to
thing that.
ask Supervisor Bramer to incorporate this.
That's what I like. I second
Okay,
that.
on that note, I will agree to that if we're going to make a motion to come out of this special committee with this, with the revised version
Is
as
there,
amended.
is there a motion to come up?
I would just like to have one more question,
Sure.
if I might put forth to administration and attorney here, that all of this lines up very well, touches all the points that's in our local law number 5 of 2021. Any issues that are there, you shall not, has a question here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, is there a motion to forward this document, this financial disclosure, onto the full board at the August meeting
I would like to make the motion to prepare it for tomorrow,
tomorrow?
and I will commit to getting the changes done. The other thing I want to say while I still have the floor is that, I'm glad to hear that Robert, our Mr. Terwilliger has reviewed this as it relates to the ethics law and making sure that it covers all of it. There was the proposal with the 3 questions, which may have swung a little too far in the other direction, but I think this is a very good compromise.
I do too.
And I do think it covers, I didn't look at this from a legal perspective, but I do think it covers, just from the common sense perspective, all the things that are in the ethics law that we should be disclosing. So anyway, that's my motion is to bring it to the floor tomorrow.
Mr. Bruno?
I'll second that.
Okay,
Okay.
all in favor?
Is there discussion?
Pardon me?
Is there discussion?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I wanted to highlight, I very much appreciate everyone's efforts and the collaboration that's taken place to bring this forward. But what I really want to highlight is that the charge of the special committee, and I'm pulling up the minutes from our board meeting. And I'm very happy to hear you'd like to forward this for tomorrow so that we don't have to do a motion to extend. The charge was for it to be presented at the meeting tomorrow. So that would have to take place from your report, Mr. Chairman, to the full board with a request to waive the rules, and then a request to adopt this as a resolution with a brief presentation on your efforts here. Certainly not in this detail, but referencing today's meeting and the efforts that have gone into it. So unless such time you want to extend the subcommittee, which it doesn't sound like you need to, but that was the charge of the special committee. So we would get these changes made and have Amanda get them out, and then it would be presented at the board meeting, the way we would any other resolution that just, came in after notice.
So we got to bring it to the floor and waive the rules.
Correct.
Any other?
Chairman?
Sure.
Yeah, on that, I mean, this would be a resolution then to set a public hearing, right? So we wouldn't actually take action until August.
Right. So you would describe that, I'm sorry, may I reply?
Sure.
You would describe this, ask to waive the rules to set the public hearing, and then, because it is amending the local law. And then in August, there would be the public comment on this, and then the hopeful adoption of your new enhanced form. Am I correct, Administrator Moore?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. So the public hearing would occur in August. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's for an amendment to local law number 5 of 2020.
Correct. As previously identified when you passed the local law and it was approved in June. And yes, I'm just rereading this right now, which is exactly what that says.
Any other questions, comments? Again, thank you very much for everybody's input and help.
We didn't vote.
Oh, we got to vote again. Okay. Is it the pleasure of the committee to move this to the full board meetings for June or July?
Yeah, we did.
16th?
You said, yep. Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ryan?
Just a comment, if I may, to the macro point that was made. What if we get questions from the public about what are you trying to hide? We reviewed, as many supervisors also did, a primer that was published 5 years ago by the New York State Bar Association, which I found very helpful to get in the right mindset of doing a code of ethics and a financial disclosure form. And there were two things that stuck out for me that I read in that primer. One of them was on page 227, and it says, the vast majority of municipal officers are honest and want to do the right thing, and the code of ethics must seek to guide and protect honest public officials. And ethics law does not, will not, and cannot catch crooks. That is not its purpose. I think if you look at our ethics code, we've always had a strong ethics code. We made improvements to the ethics code a couple of months ago. And that's the purpose of our ethics code. It's to line out conduct for everybody to look out for that could present a potential conflict. And earlier on in the manual from the Bar Associations, page 182, it speaks to what is the purpose of a disclosure form. It says the role of an annual disclosure is to bring potential conflicts of interest into the public arena, not to catch crooks. So again, you take the ethics code that we have, and then you tailor a disclosure form that's intended to come up with the possibilities for conflict based on what that ethics code guides us not to do. So I think that we've done well in both stages of that. I think this is a strong form, and I commend everybody who worked on it.
Motion to adjourn.
Move that. I'll move that.
Okay, seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
All right, want to take a